loggers, welcome back to Liminal Logs. I just want to say, I love doing this. Making these stories, building this creepy little universe for you all. It's honestly something I'm proud of. The dream is to make this a full-time thing one day. But for now, we're still on the way up. So, if you enjoy what I do and want to see more, hit like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, and most importantly, share the videos with your friends. Let's push this channel to 1,000 loggers together. There's a place in northern Vermont where the map refuses to load. If you zoom in too far on any satellite view, the pixels just smear into gray static. No roads, no shoreline, nothing. Just a pale blur, like the world itself gave up on rendering that piece. Locals call it Ashmere. I only know because I used to live near it years ago, before the state erased it from property records. I shouldn't have gone back, but the house on the lake still had my family's name carved above the door, and I needed to see what was left of it. It took 4 hours to reach the turnoff, a narrow, unmarked trail that didn't show up on GPS. Every signpost after that had been scraped clean, the paint stripped away. The deeper I drove, the quieter it got. No wind, no birds, even the trees seemed to hold their breath. Then, just before dusk, the forest opened to water. The lake was black, perfectly smooth. No reflection of the clouds, no motion of insects or leaves. The house stood right on the edge, small, rotted white siding, porch slanting toward the water, and there in the center of the lake floated a small wooden ferry. It rocked gently as if someone had just stepped off. Inside, the house smelled the same as I remembered: damp wood, cold iron, faint mildew. But the furniture was arranged differently. There was a second chair at the dining table now, and 2 plates. I was alone. Or I should have been. On the counter sat a single envelope, yellowed with age. It was addressed to me. No stamp, no handwriting. Just embossed lettering pressed into the paper, to the first who returns. Inside was a folded sheet, written in perfect penmanship. The lake never forgot your father's debt. The ferryman is still waiting. We've all been waiting. Please bring the others home. At the bottom, a symbol I hadn't seen since I was a child. A circle crossed by 3 lines carved into the wood of our old boathouse. My father called it the Mark of Return. That night I dreamed of the ferry. Someone was standing on it facing away from me, tall, draped in wet gray cloth, holding something long and heavy in both hands. When they turned, the dream didn't end. It just paused. The figure's face was hidden under a soaked hood, but water kept pouring from the empty space where the eyes should have been. The boat drifted closer, and the figure said, in a voice that sounded like two people speaking through water. There were 6 of you. Only one came back. Bring the rest, or the house will sink. I woke to the sound of waves. There were no waves. The lake was still flat, but now the ferry was closer to shore, tied to the dock with a length of black rope. Someone had left footprints leading from the boat to the porch. Bare feet, too large to be mine. And at the end of the footprints, just outside the front door, was another envelope. Same style, same embossed text. To the second who arrives. Inside. You should not be here alone. Every night the house counts the ones who stayed. Every morning it will demand another. When you hear the bell, do not look outside. No signature, but the ink smelled faintly of the same cologne my father used to wear. I threw the note into the fire. It didn't burn. It only darkened, curling inward until it became blank. Then, faintly, the sound came from across the lake. A single heavy clang, like a ship's bell. I froze because we'd never had one. I didn't look outside, not right away, but the air in the house began to shift, the walls creaking like breath. Something was moving along the shoreline. I could hear it. Soft steps in the dirt, dragging something that scraped behind them. And then a knock. 3 slow knocks on the door. When I finally looked through the window, there was no one there. Only the black ferry waiting at the dock. And on the porch, another envelope. This one wasn't sealed. Inside, written in a child's handwriting, "It's your turn to take us back." When I stepped onto the dock, the lake reflected me perfectly for the first time. Except the reflection wasn't alone. 5 smaller figures stood beside me in the water's image, each holding my hand. I never had siblings, but in the reflection I smiled at them. I didn't step onto the ferry that night, not because I was afraid, though I was, but because the air around it felt wrong. Heavy, thick, like standing too close to a generator. The rope tying the boat to the dock looked new, wet but new, and carved into the wood near the knot was that same symbol from the letters, a circle crossed by 3 lines, the mark of return. My father used to carve it everywhere. On the door frames, the tree trunks, the handles of our tools. He said it kept the trade balanced. As a kid, I thought he meant business. Now I think he meant something else entirely. When I woke the next morning, fog had swallowed the lake. The house's windows were opaque with condensation, like the building was sweating. I could hear water dripping inside the walls, slow, rhythmic, deliberate. In the kitchen, I found muddy footprints leading from the back door to the sink. 6 of them, each smaller than the last. The water in the sink was dark, rippling though nothing moved, and at the bottom something gleamed. A coin, bronze, heavy, stamped with the mark of return. When I touched it, the metal was ice cold, and a voice, quiet, close, whispered right against my ear. 1 down. I dropped the coin. It vanished into the black water without a splash. I ran outside, but the dock was empty. The ferry was gone. Only the rope remained, frayed clean through. The fog on the lake wasn't fog anymore. It was breath. You could hear it. An inhale that stretched for minutes at a time, deep and ragged. The sound of lungs the size of the horizon. When the wind shifted, I saw shapes moving in the mist. Silhouettes the size of children, wading through water that barely rippled around them. They were walking toward the house. I barricaded the door. It didn't matter. The knocking came anyway. Not from the porch, from inside the walls. Soft, uneven tapping like fingertips drumming wood from the other side. Then I heard a laugh, high, childish, echoing faintly through the pipes. The house was hollowing itself from within. Something moved behind the wallpaper, stretching it like skin. The shape of a hand pressed outward, then slid down, leaving a trail of wet. I grabbed the flashlight and stepped back. The beam flickered across the wall and caught writing bleeding through the wallpaper, scrawled in water. We didn't drown. By dusk, the fog had thinned enough for me to see the ferry again, drifting in slow circles near the center of the lake. There were figures on it now, 6 of them, small, still. One of them was holding the rope, as if waiting for me to grab the other end. And the longer I watched, the more I realized they weren't standing still. They were swaying, gently in time with the water, like children humming a song without sound. The next letter came at night. No knock this time, just a soft splash outside, and when I opened the door, an envelope lay on the porch, soaking wet. To the 3rd, who remembers. Inside. We weren't supposed to go alone. He told us we'd only cross once. But the lake doesn't give back what it takes. It only lends. You have until the water reaches the stairs. I dropped the note, ran to the porch. The shoreline was gone. The water was already halfway up the path. By midnight, the first stair vanished under the surface. The lake was swallowing the land, 1 inch at a time. I couldn't tell if it was rising or if the house was sinking. The windows rattled as something moved beneath the floorboards, heavy and slow. The air filled with the scent of algae and iron. Then the bell sounded again, closer this time, and with it came voices. It's our turn. Come see what he promised. Come see what he built. I looked out the window and saw lanterns glowing across the water. 6 small lights floating in a perfect circle. And in the center of them, a 7th light burned blue. The ferryman. The dream returned before I could close my eyes. The ferry gliding toward me. The hooded figure standing silent at the prow. Water pouring endlessly from the folds of its robe. When it spoke, the voice wasn't 2 anymore. It was 7. The house is only the first. The debt is older than names. Bring them back, or I'll start over with you. I tried to wake up. I couldn't. The boat reached the shore. The children stepped onto the sand, their faces pale and rippled like reflections disturbed by wind. Each one held a coin. Each one whispered my name. And when they smiled, the water inside their mouths shimmered with light. I woke, gasping. The floor was soaked. My flashlight lay beside me, its beam pointing at the stairs. Only 3 were still above water. By the time morning came, the lake had climbed to the front steps. The fog was thicker, white and grainy, like milk spilling through the trees. Every sound was slow and deep, as though the air itself had sunk underwater. I stayed upstairs that morning. Every instinct told me not to go near the ground floor. The wallpaper had bubbled and torn, the boards warped from moisture, and behind it all the faint rhythm of something breathing inside the walls. Every so often I could hear the bell again, not far away this time, but deep, like it was ringing beneath the foundation. The water wasn't just outside, it was inside the house. Around noon, I remembered the attic. My father used to lock himself up there for hours, writing in ledgers and burning old papers. He told me once when I was small that all trades must be recorded, even the ones with the dark. I thought it was a joke. Now I wasn't so sure. The attic door was still nailed shut, but the nails were rusted thin. When I pried them out, a wave of air rolled down like a sigh. Cold, damp, the smell of wet parchment and mold. The space was smaller than I remembered. A single desk by the window, covered in jars and ledgers, all marked with the same circle cross sigil. And above the desk, carved directly into the beam, were 6 names, each followed by a date, each crossed out in black ink except The last one. Alden Reyes, 1974. My father's name. The year he disappeared. The ledger was there too, its pages swollen and soft with moisture. Inside were columns of numbers and names written in his precise hand. But the further I read, the less it looked like accounting. The entries were short, almost ritualistic. 6 promised for safe passage. Payment delayed, interest demanded. 1 born for each, to pay in reflection. Debt incomplete. Eldest withheld. The last line was underlined twice. The ferryman will come when the house breathes again. I felt the boards shift under my feet, the sound of air moving through the cracks below. The house was breathing again. I turned the page. A sketch filled the next spread. A diagram of the lake. Lines like veins ran through it, leading to small symbols drawn around the edge. 6 circles, each with a smaller one inside. At the bottom, my father had written, "Each circle marks a child taken." But there were 7 circles. The last one was labeled with my name. Something tapped against the attic window. 3 sharp knocks, just like the ones from the first night. I turned. A child stood on the other side of the glass, face pressed against it, skin pale and wrinkled like soaked paper. Their eyes were too dark, too deep, as if the sockets never ended. Their breath fogged the glass in perfect rhythm with mine. Then their lips moved. No sound. Just one word, written in the fog. Promise. The sound of water splashing downstairs broke the trance. When I looked again, the window was empty, but the fog outside pulsed with a faint blue glow, like lightning trapped underwater. I climbed down from the attic. The water had reached the middle of the staircase. Each step groaned under its weight. The reflection on the surface wasn't mine. It was the ferryman's. Tall, shrouded. The lantern on his staff glowing that same blue. He stood where the floor used to be, watching me from the center of the submerged living room. His voice came through the walls, through the wood itself. You were promised long ago. The debt waits. 6 for the crossing, 1 for the return. I don't understand, I shouted. I wasn't even born when he made the deal. Born because he made the deal, said the voice. Born of water. Born owing. The lake rippled violently. Beneath the floorboards, I heard the sound of chains tightening, and then, faintly, laughter. 6 voices at once, giggling like children playing in shallow water. The boards cracked. dark fingers reached through, thin and dripping, clawing at the air. I ran up another few steps, the ledger clutched to my chest. When I looked down again, the hands were gone. Only the water remained, and floating on it, 6 coins, glinting bronze in the dim light, each marked with the same symbol, each engraved with a name. 5 I didn't recognize. The 6th was mine. I threw the ledger into the water. The pages opened as it sank, the ink glowing faintly as it dissolved. The voice of the ferryman came again, softer now. The book is not yours to close. It writes itself. The debt always returns. And beneath that voice, faint but rising, the sound of a bell. Slow, deep, growing closer. The house shuddered as the water reached the final stair. Something brushed my ankle, small cold fingers. And then I heard them whisper all at once, "It's your turn to row."